Moving on, we are getting into the next session, Dr. Das Mohapatra oration. For that, I would like to call upon the chairpersons, Dr. Bana Bihari Mishra from Cuttack, Dr. Prabha Om from Jaipur, Dr. Chandrasekhar Ji from Chennai, Dr. C.H. Arun Kumar Singh from Imphal, Dr. Makhan Lal Saha from Kolkata. And the topic, electrosurgical energies, past, present, and future. And for this session, I would like to introduce the speaker, Dr. Noor Thopno from Shillong.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Dr. Prabhu, I am introducing our speaker, Dr. Noor Topno. Dr. Noor Topno is presently the professor in HOD surgery and is one of the pioneer faculty in starting MBBS and PG program at NEIG RIHMS Shillong, an autonomous institute under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. He was born in Birmitpur in Sundargarh district of Orissa in 1965 and had his MBBS and MS in general surgery from Jipmer, Pondicherry. Dr. Topno also did a course from IIM Shillong in hospital administration and management in 2009, and ever since been playing a large role in hospital administration. He was medical superintendent from 2017 to April 2020. He has a keen interest in hospital administration. He has helped formulate specifications for a world-class modular OT complex at his institute and helped many institutes in similar projects. Dr. Topno has been a technical expert in Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for formulating specifications for operation theatre and other hospital services for district level hospitals in the country. He has also been a faculty in charge for hospital equipment, technical specifications at his institute. He has overseen the establishment of medical gas manifold and oxygen concentrator in many hospital services. Under his guidance, NIGRIMS was one of the first central government hospitals to introduce the Ayushman Bharat scheme. He is an assessor and coordinator with the National Assessment and Accreditation Council of India and a member of sectoral group, which was instrumental in designing the assessment manual for medical sciences. He has about 40 publications of various peer-reviewed journals. He is a member of many national specific bodies. He has a passion of teaching and patient care. His services are regularly utilized by ASI in its national and regional refresher programs. His expertise is sought all over Northeastern India as examiner, subject expert, and technical expert. Dr. Noor Topno, we are waiting to hear from you.
Right. Thank you for the
Prabha madam, I think I will have to introduce Dr. Girija Shankar Das Mahapatra.
Okay.
Whether the slides are there or on Dr. Girija Shankar Das Mahapatra or not. Okay.
It's already presented.
Okay. So let me just read. Should I read it out or not?
Which one, sir?
About the Dr. Girija Shankar Das Mahapatra, or it is not required?
No. I think have you read it? That was the first to be done.
No, the madam started, so I didn't interrupt her.
Okay. Then you please read Das Mahapatra.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I am privileged to read about Dr. Girija Shankar Das Mahapatra. Dr. Das Mahapatra was born in 1918. Dr. Mahapatra had his undergraduate medical education at the Prince of Wales Medical College, Patna, Bihar, and passed MBBS, securing the first position in Patna University in 1942. He completed his master's in surgery from the same institution and University in 1945. He then went to United Kingdom for further training and became a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh in 1947. Dr. Das Mahapatra joined SCB Medical College, Cuttack, Orissa in 1946 as Assistant Professor of Surgery, and over a period of time elevated to the rank of Professor and then as Head of the Department of Surgery. He worked as Principal of SCB Medical College, Cuttack, Orissa, and finally retired from government service as Director of Medical Education of Odisha. Dr. Mahapatra was a very versatile surgeon, an outstanding teacher of surgery, an able administrator with foresight, a lovable person, a poet, a writer, a social worker, lover of nature, and above all, a good human being. He had visited several medical colleges in the country as visiting professor to teach disease of rectum and anal canal. International Board of Proctology honorably recognized his contribution in the said surgical field by conferring upon him the degree of Regent of the International Board of Proctology. He was awarded Dr. Premnath Wahi Lectureship during the year 1987 at Ahmedabad. He was a life member of the Association of Surgeons of India and played a decisive role in formation of the ASI Odisha chapter. He was the organizing chairman of SCCon 1994 held at Cuttack. Dr. Mahapatra breathed his last in the year 1997. In consideration of his tremendous contribution to the growth of surgery in this country and in recognition of his academic excellence, the ASI instituted an oration in his name in the year 1996. Thank you very much, sir. Now I welcome Dr. Noor Tompe to present his oration.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for highlighting literally the career of Dr. Das Mahapatra, and Dr. Prabha for introducing me. This is my first slide. So as you know, the topic is all about electrosurgical energies, past, present, and the future. This is the institute where I work. I've been here for the last 18 years now. It's a wonderfully located institute, far away from the hustle and bustle of large cities, and you have exactly a perfect weather. Every time you go to Delhi, you long to get back to this place. And what you see is the beautiful flowers of a prunus family, which is also known as cherry blossom in India. Of course, it's different from the cherry blossom that we get in Japan. That is from the Sakura family. It's a proud privilege for me to be delivering this oration, which is dedicated to Girija Shankar Das Mahapatra, more so because both he, an illustrious surgeon, and myself, I'm probably not a fledgling surgeon, but the common thread between us is we both are from the same state of Odisha. This is the famous SCB Cuttack Medical College, where he taught for a long time and did wonders as far as the development of surgery and surgical branch in Odisha is concerned. Energy sources, primarily, the electrosurgery is perhaps the most crucial as far as performance of the surgery is concerned. And most advancement which has happened in the field of surgery is closely linked to this evolution of the technology here. But sadly, the knowledge of electrosurgical energy and the electrosurgical units amongst most of the surgeons is rather limited. It was the same for me, but because of my task that was heading the committee on drafting the various specifications of surgical units when our institute, NIGRIMS, was in the stage of being set up, I developed a keen interest in a lot of this surgical devices, and that is how my romance with electrosurgical units started. There are a few misnomers that I'd like to highlight. Number one is diathermy. Diathermy, when we speak, we commonly use the word give me the diathermy. But actually, when you look at it, diathermy is basically just a process of heating tissues without actually damaging. And the main reason is you have a large electrode, and that does something specific. And that's the reason why not much heating and damage to tissues happen. And this is widely used in physiotherapy and not exactly in surgery. Electrocautery. In electrocautery, the current usually which is used is a direct current, and patient is not part of the circuit. And patient does not, he's totally free from the electric current, because the electric current does not actually enter his body. This is basically an obsolete technology which was used in the early times. We don't use it anymore. Whereas it's electrosurgery which is the one which is in vogue, and it is a very versatile technique. And here the alternating current which is used actually enters the body, and that is how there is generation of heat that happens. Now, there are a few things I just like to highlight. This is one paper which I just saw recently. The word diathermy, cornerstone of diathermy used for junior surgical trainees. Again, diathermy is commonly used in modern day surgery. So these misnomers are here, and I think it will be a long time before we ever get rid of it. Now, if you look at the past, how electrosurgical unit developed. In the late 1800s, that was 1890 something, that is when the first few discoveries happened in electricity, which led to the development of this technology. This is basically a timeline. I'll not really go into them. But if you look at terms like diathermy, this is something that was used way back in 1897. Then fulguration. Fulguration was a terminology which was developed in the 1900s. Electrocoagulation, again in 1900s. Desiccation in 1914. It is in 1926 that electrosurgical unit actually was popularized by William H. Cushing and Bovie. Then, of course, we had the bipolar coming in 55, and in 1970, we started using these energies through endoscopes. Now, this is the first big step. That is, Arsenoval, he discovered that when you give high frequency energy or electricity to the body, the human body was free of any shock and any deleterious effect of current. And this is the landmark event. And this happened in Peter Brent Brigham Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. This was in 1926. And after the surgery, this is what Cushing wrote. With Dr. Bovie's help. Now, when I say Dr. Bovie was not actually a medical doctor, but he was a PhD scholar. So with Dr. Bovie's help, I proceeded to take off most satisfactorily the remaining portion of the tumor, practically none of the bleeding which was occasioned in the preceding operations. I think this was a landmark event which led to the development of this particular technology and the modern day electrosurgical units which we are using in our hospitals. Now, this is just a picture to show you. This is perhaps the first electrosurgical unit that was developed, and the company actually was started by Bovie, and of course down the line it was sold to some other company. And but Bovie is something that is still the name is still quite famous, and they still do make electrosurgical units. Present, what is our understanding as far as electrosurgical units are concerned? Now, let's say, to be able to understand about electrosurgical units, we need to know a little about electricity. Current is nothing but flow of electrons during a period of time and is measured in amperes. Circuit is the path through which uninterrupted flow of electrons happen. Voltage is the electromotive force that pushes the current across any resistance and within the circuit. Impedance is, of course, the obstacle to the flow of electricity and measured in ohms. Now, some of the universal properties of electricity are the density is more in pointed objects. It always seeks the ground and it goes through the path of least resistance. And along the path, it also generates some amount of heat. Voltage is nothing but current into the resistance, the product of that. And power is a product of the voltage that is applied and the current that is used. This is basically the basis through which heating happens when alternating current is passed. Basically, at the anode and the cathode, the anions and cations, they keep changing direction because in AC current, unlike the direct current, the current changes direction. So because of this frequent movement of cations, you actually have frictional heat that is generated. Now, most are familiar with what is the electrosurgical unit, so I'll not really go into much of it. This is basically the generator. You have the various controls. You have the on-off switch around here. This is what is called as the active electrode or the patient electrode. This is basically in two parts. The older ones used to be in single part. I'll be discussing more about it in the next few slides. Now again, there are two basic circuits of electrosurgical unit, the monopolar and the bipolar. You see the current flow here is basically is coming to the patient, and through the electrode, the patient electrode, it comes out and then it goes back to the generator. And again from the generator, it is coming into the patient. In the bipolar, the flow is over a very small area between these two arms of the instrument that is being used. So it's considered the monopolar can be more harmful, but bipolar technically is considered much safer. Now, these are the changes that happens in the body. At 60 degrees, what happens is there is unraveling of the collagen helices, but actual damage does not really happen except for unraveling. At 70 to 80, there's deterioration of protein happening and coagulation happens. Further heating at about 90, desiccation happens. Once it reaches beyond 100 degrees, that is where intracellular water starts boiling and tissue cutting happens. And more than 200 degrees, you have fulguration happening. I will not really go into the details of this, but I'll just give you a gist of what exactly is meant by these waveforms. Waveforms is the distribution of energy, whether it is low voltage or it is high voltage. And this is continuous here, here it is interrupted, and here the interruption is much more. So basically, when you talk about pure cutting current, the flow of current is continuous. There is no gap in the flow, and the voltage used is low. When you go to the other end of the spectrum, here you find that the current that is used is high voltage, and there is a huge gap between this wave and this wave. So this is basically called the duty cycle. So here, in coagulation mode, the flow of current is not continuous. Only for 6% of the time, current flow is happening. And that is how the heat generated here is different as compared to the pure cut mode. And in between, we have different blend, which is basically a variation about the voltage, whether it is low or on the higher side, and also how long the current is flowing. This is a very important slide. In the pure cut mode and the coagulation mode in the other end of the spectrum, we are talking about how the thermal spread happens. In the pure cut mode, the lateral damage or the lateral thermal spread is much lower as compared to coagulation mode. What is important from this slide for us to know is, it is always preferable to use the cutting current whenever possible rather than use coagulation, especially when you're doing surgeries in critical areas. Sometimes we use the coagulation current also to do cutting, which is not a desirable thing to do. Now, I'll not really go into the details of this, but I'll just touch upon the various tissue effects. Vaporization is what cutting is all about. This is when temperature goes beyond 100, you get the vaporization effect and therefore the cutting. And fulguration is basically a monopolar function. It is, most importantly, it is a non-contact. Just like vaporization and cutting is a non-contact process. The electrode need not touch the body surface which you want to cut. But if you keep it just about a few millimeters away from it, the current actually jumps across, and that is how the cutting effect or the coagulation effect in fulguration happens. Desiccation, again, both in the bipolar mode and the monopolar mode, you can get it. And the tissue effect is usually one of coagulation or hemostasis. Here, the flow is either continuous or interrupted. Coaptation is a newer technology, which is seen exclusively in bipolar current. And here, basically, it's used for hemostasis. Now, electrosurgical unit has various variables on which the tissue effects depend. One is the kind of waveform which I had talked about initially, the power setting. We keep saying increase the power because it is not cutting enough or not coagulating enough. And the time duration for which we are using the electrode, the active electrode on the part that we wish to cut or we want to coagulate. And also the size of the active electrode which we are using, whether it's a small surface or a large surface. And how much of eschar formation has happened on the electrode. And the distance at which we hold from tissue, because non-contact cutting is actually considered much superior from contact cutting. And also the type of tissues which you use. Muscles, they conduct much better, and therefore the cutting process in muscles is much better, whereas in fats, the resistance is rather high, and therefore the cutting effect is much less. Just to touch upon how important electrosurgical units are vis-a-vis injuries, American College of Surgeons has reported almost 40,000 surgical burns per year. And 80% of surgeons had instillation failure. This is pertaining to usually laparoscopic surgery. And 45% knew a colleague who had instillation failure. Sum total is about $60 million was paid as compensation for these injuries. Now, when you talk about burns, there are typically 4 types of burns. One which happens at the return electrode, number 2 at the active electrode, and there is something called as coupling that happens, which is a direct and a capacitor, and the 4th variety is insulation failure. This is just to show you the kind of burns you can get at the return electrode. That usually happens, like here, when the contact between the body surface and the electrode here has come off. So the contact area has become much smaller. Therefore, the current density becomes much larger. And there is more generation of heat in that area, and that's how burns happen. As long as the contact is good, there is good dissipation of current, and usually burn does not happen. You have direct thermal extension, and classically, when you are trying to divide adhesions, what also happens is, because the low surface area which is there in the adhesions, usually a lot of current and a high current density is there in these areas, and that is how sometimes burns can happen. Direct thermal injury can happen usually because of excessive use, and especially if you're using the coagulation mode too much. Direct coupling obviously happens when inadvertently you end up touching some other instrument which you're not supposed to be touching. Now, this is something interesting which we have been talking about, capacitive coupling. The most important thing here is for the current transfer to happen, the 2 conductors need not be in touch with each other. Usually, 2 conductors are separated by some sort of an insulation. But because of the electromagnetic effect that is there, usually the current jumps across the insulation and goes to the next instrument. And if the instrument is touching some critical thing like valve, it can cause injury to the valve. And capacitance coupling depends a lot on the type of instruments you're using, how long the instrument is, what type of current you're using. If you're using cutting, the chances of damage are less. Coagulation, yes, it is more. And also the diameter of the cannulas when you're doing laparoscopy. Insulation failure. Now, in insulation failure, the key thing is if there's a small crack or a defect in the insulation, what happens is, as compared to an area with a large defect, in a small defect, the density of current that is collecting is much, much high, and therefore the damage that is happening is too much. Return electrode selection, these are some of the areas where you have to ensure if you put in a well-vascularized area, it works well, whereas in a less vascularized, you have problems. Storing, you need to store it probably in something where the conduction is much less, and do not do this. These are some of the recommendations. Basically, inspect the insulation, low setting, low voltage wave formations, intermittent activation, keep away from other instruments. Bipolar is always preferred. In lab instrument, always use all metal cannulas. Of course, having a good ESU unit is always preferable. Now, what are the newer technologies? Now, this return electrode monitoring is something that is very interesting. Here, this is in 2 parts. The return electrode. So basically between these 2 you have a circuit. So whenever there is any loss of contact between this and this, it will not allow the machine to operate. And that's how it prevents electrode burn in the return area. Now this is capacitive coupling is something that is detrimental to surgery, but it also has some useful use, very, very useful use as far as newer technology is concerned. So here by capacitive coupling, what is happening is the current. Here you don't actually have a direct contact with the patient's electrode. Patient is on an insulated gel, and between this conductive mesh, both sides we have gel. The current actually jumps from here to here because of capacitive coupling. So here, it does away with the need of putting any return electrode. So there is no chance of any return electrode burn happening at all. This is how it looks. It is quite a big thing. It is almost about 2 feet into 1 feet in size. Now, one more safety measure is the auto bipolar mode. The good things about the auto bipolar mode, which you see here, is the grasping forceps, the moment to grasp tissue, the bipolar mode kicks in. You don't have to press a separate foot switch. So here it eliminates the need for a foot switch. So usually it is a smooth and tiresome exercise, and precise coagulation usually happens. Other thing is the tissue impedance or the response, tissue response. Most older units used to, the electrode would give a feedback to the generator as to how much is the impedance. And that used to happen about 200 times per second. The newer machines go up to almost as much as 3,000 times per second. Therefore, the machine decides at what point, the current flow into the electrode will stop. And what it does is, by doing this, it automatically switches off the excess current. And that way, damage is much less. Now, APC, or the argon plasma coagulator, this is basically the good thing about this. I will not go into the process, how it works, maybe in some other scenario, because that would make it too long. The most important thing, it uses argon gas, and there is creation of a plasma environment over there. And this plasma now, even in the inert gas, which argon is, it actually conducts electricity, and therefore it's a non-contact method. There is no electrode charring, and the flow of argon that happens, which is under high pressure, also results in cooling of the tip. Now, PER is basically the power efficiency rating. Now, this is basically the ability of a generator to provide the exact amount of energy as you have set it. So any generator which has a higher PER is always a better one. Okay, so whenever you select a generator, make sure that the PER is somewhere in the order of 98. Now, again, one of the new things that have happened is vis-a-vis the electrode. Now, this is the kind of charring that happens in the standard stainless steel electrodes that we use. And this is a PTFE coated, and the charring effect is much less and it's much easier to clean. That apart, of course, you have silicone coated also, and also ceramic electrodes. Now, other new innovation which has recently come up is how to evacuate the smoke. So here, you can make out there is a hollow channel here. Through this, actually, whatever smoke that comes out, that gets evacuated. And in the machine, this is the unit which actually has a bacterial and also a particulate filter through which it goes into that. And what it does effectively is, apart from creating a safe environment for the surgeon, it also reduces the temperature by taking away the hot gases which come out. The advanced bipolar technology, here basically, the first thing that the machine has, it senses the impedance. And here what happens basically is, the process is what is called as coaptation. It is not exactly called coagulation, but coaptation. Some amount of pressure has to be used on the tissues which you want to coagulate. And the vessels, almost up to 7 mm, can be safely blocked off by this process. And it can take up pressure almost up to 3 times the systolic BP. And lateral tissue damage is considered to be much less. And the system automatically senses that the coagulation is complete and switches off automatically. This is not exactly EUS technology, but there are some developments which have come up in this, which is why this has been included. Otherwise, strictly speaking, this is not ultrasonic technology is not exactly EUS technology. Now, this is what I was talking about, this change that has come. Ultrasonic technology has now also introduced a bipolar technology within it. This is actually Olympus machine. So what it does is the ultrasonic takes care of basically the coagulation of the coapting part, and the cutting part is actually done by the bipolar current. Now, this can seal up to 7 mm, but one of the issues which are coming up is in any ultrasonic process, usually the tip heats up quite a bit because the process through which heat is generated is different in EUS and ultrasonic. So one of the problems here is, since both ultrasonic as well as heat are given and delivered to these areas, maybe the longevity is in question, but that I think only after much more usage we'll be able to know whether it is detrimental or not. CUSA. Now again, the reason why we have introduced CUSA here in this talk is, now the newer machines, they come with inbuilt monopolar, not the bipolar technology. So as you are doing liver dissection, what you can also do is, instead of using a separate energy source to do your coagulation or clipping, you can actually use the same energy source and do your coagulation part also. Radio frequency ablation, here the current that is used is much, much higher. It is there obviously in the radio frequency range. That means it is somewhere above 500 kilohertz. It's very useful for liver tumors. Pulse current is delivered. Usually the tissue charring is quite less, and to bring down and maintain the resistance of the tissues in and around that area, cold water or cold saline is actually circulated through the needle tip. So it's called a cool tip technology. This is something that is new. It's basically a high frequency radio frequency is used here. And here actually, unlike the electrosurgical unit, it is not the heating that is important, but the resonant effect, the resonating effect. Just like when you, soldiers, when they march over bridges, they are instructed to break their march, because if their frequency matches the resonating frequency of the bridges are likely to collapse. It is this resonance which breaks the bond between the tissue bonds, and that leads to a cutting effect. The heat produced is somewhere around 45 to 65 only, and it has both monopolar and bipolar action, and the tissue effect is very, very precise. Now again, microwave ablation, here the energy use is even higher. The conventional machines used to use somewhere up to, from 900 to 2500 megahertz. But the newer machine, the lower down which you see, uses energy which is much more than 2 gigahertz. Okay, the temperature which is attained is around 60 to 150 degrees centigrade. And the important thing is this effect happens very, very fast. And the tip has to be cool. So either saline or carbon dioxide is circulated through it to bring about a cooling effect. One of the advantages of using carbon dioxide is through carbon dioxide, there is something called the needle locking mechanism, which you can activate and deactivate as and when you want it. And here the heat sink effect, that is when you're close to any important vessel, the heat sink effect is very, very less. And this is used for irreversible tumors or tumors which are less than 3 centimeters in size. Now, what about the future? Perhaps the best way to predict the future is to create it, but to create, we need to know which are the gap areas where we probably need to work. So these are the problem areas. Limiting lateral and deep thermal spread technology perhaps is going to change and improve it even further. Limiting tissue sticking on active electrode, improved adaptive electrosurgical generators using probably artificial intelligence, precise temperature control like the electrode and the tissue interface, and probably very soon we may be having some technology which will lead to our ability to basically weld tissues. And that's how we can create bowel anastomosis, and also a alloderm mesh can be used for hernia repair. So to conclude my talk, as far as electrosurgical unit or the generator is concerned, I think the technology has come a very long way in the last probably 90 years. But as with any other technology of the electrosurgical unit is still evolving, and I'm sure many more new and exciting things will be coming up. These are my sources from where I have got information, which are basically the monograms from the various companies, and I have no conflict of interest. I'd like to thank the organizing committee for having given me this opportunity to deliver this oration. And Mr. Sambit Sahu, who also hails from Orissa, he was very much instrumental in helping me with this preparation of the talk. And the telemedicine unit is instrumental in, establishing a good and safe communication between you and me. Thank you.
Excellent, sir. Good.
Thank you so much.
Nice presentation.